Mic test. So let's now talk about schools of thought in language learning. There are three schools of thought in language learning. First one is behaviorism and environmentalism. Oh, by the way, when we say schools of thought in language learning, we're talking about how people think language is driven. There are three schools of thought in language learning, and it's based on what they believe to be the driver of language learning. What drives language learning? What drives language acquisition? And there are three schools of thought regarding what drives language learning. The first one is behaviorism slash environmentalism. Environmentalism or behaviorism believes that it's the environment that drives language learning. So it's the environment, the environment, the environment. It's not so much on the brain. And here are some proponents under that. The most important would be B.F. Skinner. You have probably encountered B.F. Skinner in one of your courses. B.F. Skinner applied the learning theory called behaviorism in language learning because behaviorism believes in habit formation, habit formation. And B.F. Skinner believes that language is a set of habits. B.F. Skinner and other behaviorists believe that language is a set of habits. So, how do you learn a language? Do you learn habits? Everything about learning habits is applied to language. And so, they're not concerned about what happens in the brain. What is important is the input from the environment. Then we also have Robert Lado. Robert Lado believed that learners will find it easy where the two languages, the first language and the target language, have similarities. Where L1 and L2 are similar, while in areas where the first language are different, where in areas where the first language are different from the second language, that's where language learners will find it difficult. So you as the teacher need to understand, need to find out where the first language and the second language differ. You need to predict where they differ, and you proactively find ways to deal with that difficulty that students will experience. So Robert Lado called this theory contrastive analysis hypothesis. Contrastive analysis hypothesis. The idea that we're in aspects or in parts where the first language and the second language are different, language learners will find difficulty. In areas where the first language and the second language are different, that's where, did I say it wrong? Where the first language and the second language are similar, language learners will find ease in learning. In areas where the first language and the second language are different, that's where the language learners will find difficulty. We will learn, class, later on that it's not always the case. It's not always the case. Where there were areas where the two languages are similar, they are similar, and yet students, language learners found difficulty in learning the language. And there are areas where the first language and the second language are different, and yet language learners found it easy. Then we also have John Schumann, who believed that language is a set of habits. Uh, yes, language is a set of habits, and language is a subset of culture. So John Schumann believed that language is a subset of culture. So language learning is a subset of culture learning. You want to learn the language, learn the culture. Not necessarily accept the culture, not necessarily imitate the culture, but understand the culture. And according to John Schumann, what is most important is social contact with the target language speakers. And he called his theory acculturation theory. Okay, so we said that behaviorism, environmentalism believe that it's the environment that drives language learning. Then there's this other school of thought that believes that no, it's the brain, it's not the environment, it's the brain that drives language learning. And this school of thought is called Innatism. Ala, di pala lumalabas yung PowerPoint. Oh, did I share it? It's shared in my, it appears in my, it appears in my screen, but oh, there it's now. There it is. Do you see it now? So we have schools of thought in language learning. Again, those schools of thought are based on what they believe drives language learning. The first one is called behaviorism slash environmentalism, which which believes that it's the environment that drives language learning. One important proponent is B.F. Skinner. You have probably encountered B.F. Skinner in other courses, and he believed that language is a set of habits. We'll discuss his theory of behaviorism later. Then we have Robert Lado, whose theory is contrastive analysis hypothesis. Again, Robert Lado's theory is called contrastive analysis hypothesis. And he believed that where the first language and the target language are the same, there will be ease in learning that part. And where the first language and the second language are different, that's where language learners will experience difficulty. We will also discuss his theory called contrastive analysis hypothesis. Then we have John Schumann, who believed that language is a subset of culture, and language learning is a subset of culture learning. You want to learn language? Learn the culture. Not necessarily accept the culture, not necessarily imitate the culture, not necessarily adopt the culture, but learn the culture. And for John Schumann, the most important is social contact. His theory is called acculturation. His theory is called acculturation. We will discuss acculturation also. Then there's this school of thought who believes that it's the brain that drives language learning. It's called Innatism, also called cognitivism, also called nativism. And people under this school of thought believe that it's the brain that drives language learning. Again, innatists, cognitivists, nativists believe that it's the brain that drives language learning with only minimal input from the environment. Again, with only minimal input from the environment. It's really the brain. And the most popular, the most well known proponent of this idea is Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky wrote a scathing criticism of B.F. Skinner's book, Verbal Behavior. And we will discuss his theory in Innatism also. We will also discuss his theory. Then we also have Stephen Krashen. Stephen Krashen believes that what is important is what is called comprehensible input. Input that is understandable. Stephen Krashen came up with a theory called the five hypotheses of language learning, which we will also discuss. Stephen Krashen came up with five hypotheses of language learning, and the most important is what is called the input hypothesis, which it states that input should be comprehensible. There should be clues as to what you are saying. By the way, class, all of these have videos in the LMS. So if you want to learn ahead, if you want to study ahead, you can do so by watching those videos in LMS. Then we also have Larry Selinker, who believes in a theory, who proposed a theory called interlanguage. You see, just like a baby develops in stages until it becomes informed like a human being, that's also language. Your language, your English develops. At first, your English doesn't look like the English of native speakers. Your English doesn't look like the English of Americans. And then it goes through certain stages where it becomes more and more, it looks more and more like the language of native speakers. And then finally, it really looks like English. What you're saying really looks like English. That's called interlanguage. Okay, so we have behaviorism and slash environmentalism. We have innatism slash cognitivism slash nativism. Then finally, we have this school of thought called interactionism. According to interactionists, It's not the environment, it's not the brain, but it's the interaction between the brain and language. It's the interaction between the brain and language that drives language learning. What drives language learning is the interaction between the brain and the environment. And one of the proponents under this school of thought is named Evelyn Hatch, and her theory is called discourse theory. Discourse theory. We'll also discuss that. She teaches that in order to learn language, you need to learn to participate in conversation. Learn to participate in conversation. Want to learn English? Learn to participate in interaction. Learn to participate in conversations. Okay? Learn to participate conversations in English so that you learn English. Then we also have a guy named Del Himes. Del Himes said that it's not enough to learn the grammar of a language for you to be known as somebody who knows the language. You see, class, Noam Chomsky believed that if a language learner learns the grammar, then he learns the language. Learn the grammar, you learn the language, according to Noam Chomsky. But according to Delheims, no, there are so many things you still need to learn, like how to say something properly, how to understand the culture, the context. So Delheims came up with a theory called communicative competence. Communicative competence is the theory that Delheim started. We'll also discuss that, and you can also learn ahead by watching the videos about this one. Communicative competence means being able to say the right things, the right time, and in the right way. Saying the right things, the right time, the right way. Saying things the right way at the right time. Saying things, saying the right things the right way at the right time. By the way, class, I think many people who used to be under the school of thought Innatism eventually transferred to interactionism. Many proponents who were under Innatism eventually transferred to interactionism. Finally, we have a guy named Pineman. He believed that there are certain parts of language that can be taught, and there are parts of language that cannot be taught. Okay, Pineman thinks that this is the reason why Robert Lado's contrastive analysis hypothesis failed, because there are parts of language that are teachable, and there are parts of language that are not teachable. So Pineman came up with what is called the teachability hypothesis. Okay, so these are the schools of thought. Behaviorism slash environmentalism believes that language learning is driven by the environment. It's the environment that drives language learning. Uh, Innatism, cognitivism slash nativism believes that it's the brain that drives language learning, and interactionism believes that it's the interaction between the brain and the language and the environment that drives language learning. So interactionism believes that it's the interaction between the brain and the environment that drives language learning. That's it for today. Okay, I wonder if you have any questions. Okay, thank you very much. If you have no more questions, have a nice day. You're dismissed.